Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Jared, aka MisterJayRod. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Ken.
Dude, super stoked to have you here. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you. You are a husband and soon to be father for the first time. We got a January baby coming. Everybody keep their fingers crossed for January 10th. Um, Best birthday day in the world. You are a variety streamer over on Twitch. You started uploading some of your previous streams onto your YouTube channel as well. Your main focus is working on a backlog of games, which includes a lot of classics. Working your way through Super Mario Brothers right now at the moment.
It's kicking my ass.
I believe that you and I had a conversation about how A Link to the Past totally trumps Super Mario Brothers.
Oh man, so far it's definitely my preferred style of game.
I'll even go as far as, look, I love Ocarina of Time. I do. I think Ocarina of Time is a fucking blast. I love that game. Link to the Past, hands down, favorite Zelda game ever. I'll never forget as a young boy when I found out how to unflood the water temple in the light world and then go back to the dark world to get into that. I think it's diamond number 5 or diamond number 6 on the diamond screen. How over the top excited I was because I'd spent like a month trying to figure out how to get into that palace. And then to go into the light world and undo the thing where all the water comes out of the dam. And then you go back into the dark world so you can go into that. Oh man, that to me was like, it's a core memory for me. So like, yeah, if you guys can't tell, I love video games as well. But while not exclusively a horror channel, you do play a lot of horror video games. And the best thing about this, guys, coming up September, October, the fall season, he is going to be doing a lot more horror gaming for the fall season. So do you have any games picked out that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, so like Ken said, one of the reasons I got my Twitch channel up and going is just I noticed that, I've always been a gamer. It's been a hobby of mine, but I tended to replay a lot of the same games. So I wanted to get my Twitch channel up and running just to give myself an excuse to play through some of the classics that I haven't played to. Like Ken mentioned, there's a lot of Nintendo series I haven't played. But coming up September, October, some of the horror games I'm going to focus on are the first Resident Evil. Never played it, and I love like the Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 4 remake, some of my favorite games of all time. So it's time to go back and try and like get through that first one. I've never played Alien Isolation all the way through, and with the hype around Alien Romulus right now, everyone's excited about that. So at least those 2 games, and then I'll probably replay some games just Until Dawn is great if you're a fan of slashers and that sort of genre. You can get some like chat involved in like choosing what the characters do. So things like that. I haven't come up with a full list yet, but definitely Resident Evil, definitely Alien Isolation for sure.
We are getting an Until Dawn movie. So
That's
maybe
true, yeah.
For those of you that have not seen the video game, which the movie is going to be different. The movie is not going to include any Wendigos, which I think is super unfortunate.
Yeah.
The movie's more like a Happy Death Day R-rated version. It's people that are stuck in a time loop at the cabin trying to figure out who the killer is. But the game is phenomenal. And so if you guys don't know anything about Until Dawn, make sure you're following or subscribing, whatever it is, over on Twitch. So you can be part of his community. Make sure you are doing that on YouTube as well. And you don't have to go far to do that, guys. You know me, I do the legwork. All the links are down in the description. So make sure you're following him on social media. Make sure you're becoming a part of his family by subscribing, following. Which one is it on Twitch?
Follow on Twitch for now. Since I'm new, you can't subscribe yet. You got to earn that right in order to subscribe. So just follow us for now. Really appreciate it.
Well, follow him for now so that way he can get to the point where you can subscribe and then subscribe to his channel. So I'm really happy for you, man. Especially, like I said, while I love, eat, breathe horror, I also love video games in general. I know a lot of the horror community feels the same way. So you don't have to exclusively be horror to be our family. So I'm really proud to have you here. Really happy to see how it started for you. So with that, let's go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Jared, the first horror movie you watched was?
So a little bit of context. I was very much a latecomer to horror. Besides things like maybe Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, or which is gateway horror, or some more horror adjacent stuff like Jurassic Park. My first real introduction to horror, the first horror movie I watched all the way through was Freddy versus Jason. And I was probably about 12 years old when I saw that. So late. And then I really didn't like horror until I was 18. So it took a little while even after that to get fully into like the love of the horror genre. But Freddy versus Jason, that was the first full horror movie I watched front to back. It was at a sleepover with some friends. And you never want to be the Frady cat whiny kid at a sleepover that, no, I don't want to watch it. You go along with it. You just sort of man up and whatnot and do it. And I did it. And nightmares ensued after that for a little while.
Oh, I bet. You're getting two iconic slashers together in one film. So you're not just getting scared of one of them. You're getting scared of both of them at the same time. So, and Freddy vs. Jason, well, I've said this a million times. It's by no means a cinematic masterpiece, like by no stretch of the imagination, but it's Freddy and Jason in the same movie.
Yes.
That enough is a selling point. I'll watch this movie 1,000 times over just because it's Freddy and Jason in the same movie. And I actively root for them to kill every single kid that comes on screen because they annoy the living shit out of me.
Oh, yeah.
So we know you were quite young watching it at a sleepover when you had first seen it, but this movie is, like I said, it is still very iconic. You know, it's Freddy and Jason in the same movie. A lot of effective scenery. But do you remember what scene affected you the most?
Oh, there's a lot to choose from. It could be any number of scenes. Like, so again, no prior background of like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So that opening scene where Freddy's doing the voiceover is really great. The scene where the abusive boyfriend gets snapped backwards by Jason's great. And the whole like scene in the cornfield with Jason on fire walking through, awesome. But the scene that for some reason affected me the most was the scene where I think the character is called Blake. I just watched it last night, so I should remember this, but I think his name's Blake. We'll go with that. He and his dad are on their front porch. Blake falls asleep. He has a nightmare. Freddy's not quite strong enough to get him. And so he wakes up. He turns over to his dad. His dad's head just falls off. He stands up in shock and fear. Jason's right behind him, stabs him through. End of scene. So in hindsight, maybe not the most memorable or coolest kill, but for some reason that scene stuck with me because I vividly remember it must have been a week or a couple weeks later, I had a nightmare specifically about that scene. Don't know why, but there it is. It left an imprint on me in terms of it entered my nightmares. Oddly enough, it wasn't Freddy that entered my nightmares. It was Jason. So
right. And it's funny because, like I said, a lot of these times, like a lot of people that watch this did watch it a little bit earlier, you know, and you know, we get the idea of, you know, these moments aren't too scary because we've seen the other films, blah, 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 blah. But when you see this film as one of your first horror movies and you see a kid's dad's head chopped off, I mean, you don't see it chopped off. I'm sorry.
It just falls
shakes
off.
His dad and falls off. But when you see that, you know, as a kid, especially, who's stronger than your dad?
Yeah.
You know, your dad is a fucking superhero when you're a kid. So when you have, you know, shake and the head falls off, it's like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on here? So I get it, man. Like, especially as a young boy, seeing something like that, it's definitely terrifying. You know, this dude's head just fell off in somebody's lap and it's his dad whose head fell off. So that is, like I said, a very effective scene, especially at a young age. But Freddy vs. Jason does have a lot of moments of levity in it. You know, there are some great character moments that actually genuinely make you laugh. But do you remember which scene it was that was your favorite from the film?
Ooh, let me think. Like I said, there's just so many good ones. Sorry, this is the answer I didn't prepare for, so you're catching me off guard here. Let me just think about like, so last night watching it, I think actually, you know, with the full context of the entire like Friday the 13th franchise, maybe actually getting to see Kid Jason, this sounds terrible, seeing Kid Jason get picked on, seeing the scene that would eventually, like, if that wasn't all like, you know, in universe, like canonical, right? Like seeing that sort of like catalyst for the rest of the series play out in whether or not it was like Freddy's construction of like a nightmare, Jason's death, his drowning, whatever. But that was kind of cool. Something we had never really seen played out in any of the Friday the 13th before that, like the actual death that would leave Pamela to do her deeds in the first Friday the 13th and then so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, overall, it's probably that scene is my favorite just because it was something we hadn't seen in any of the previous installments.
And I love how Freddy puts himself in that scene as a counselor.
Oh, yeah.
like that makes it even better. Like, God damn it, Freddy, next son of a bitch.
My wife, my wife's reaction to that when we watched it last night, she was like, are those counselors doing what I think they're doing? Yes, that was supposed to be kind of the whole point. They're not paying attention to these
Right.
terrible kids bullying Jason.
And that's why Pamela had to make the comeback.
Exactly.
Because that was her baby boy.
Mm-hmm.
So usually at this point of the interview, we'll talk about if this is a franchise, what's your favorite movie in that franchise. But we're going to do a little bit different here because obviously with this movie, you have two franchises coming together. You have the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. You have the Friday the 13th franchise. So instead of asking you what's your favorite movie in the franchise, which of those two franchises do you prefer as a whole? Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street?
I'm definitely more a Friday the 13th fan. This might be blasphemous, but Freddy vs. Jason is my favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, followed closely by 3 and then 1. The rest I can kind of take or leave. Well, New Nightmare is good too. But when it comes to, I just have more fun with a lot of the Friday the 13th franchise. And that ultimately is, what's going to trump it. This isn't my favorite of the Friday the 13th franchise. That would go to the 2009 remake. Again, that might be controversial, but I just like more of the Friday the 13th movies a bit more.
And it has Jason Goes to Hell. So we can all.
I did watch that for the first time last year, and I know your love of it. And I was like, the next time I watch this, I want to watch like with the director's commentary to hear all the insides. Since it was my first time watch, I didn't watch it with all the commentary.
Please let me know what you think, because I do absolutely fucking love that movie. So
yeah,
and that movie did lay the groundwork for Freddy vs. Jason.
It's true. So, coming out of the ground.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you want to talk about a head exploding moment? That was my head exploding moment. That was my Avengers Assemble moment right there. So okay, now here's another question for you, because I have my answer, and some people agree, some people don't agree. Who was victorious in this movie? Freddy or Jason?
I mean, I gotta say Jason. Jason walks out of the water completely, full bodied, and Freddy's just ahead. Yeah, he winks at the camera, and we could come up with all sorts of fan theories about what that means, but I gotta go with Jason. I know, I'm sorry.
Totally Jason. I don't give a shit.
Oh, okay. You agree.
What you gonna do? Be the Black Knight? I'll bite your legs off. Like
I had that thought while watching it last night. I was like, this is kind of a Monty Python spoof a little bit.
Right. Like the wink, it's obviously just a, set up the potential for a sequel maybe someday. But yeah, come on. Jason had 99% of the kills in the movie. Yep. Jason beat the living shit out of Freddy. All Freddy really had in the movie was the pinball machine thing. Like that's really all he had on Jason. But
trying to scare Jason with water, which
right. Get the fuck out. Like I said, man, Jason is literally coming out of the water at the end of the movie. Like he's not scared of water. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like those kids were definitely way too high when they were talking about that shit. Like the knockoff Jay from Jay and Silent Bob definitely had some good weed, at least, because those kids were they were definitely feeling it when they were talking about that.
Terrible CGI caterpillar that
was so fucking awful.
So bad.
Like I said, I can forgive a lot of it just because, dude, if they made Freddy versus Jason and it was an hour 45 of Freddy and Jason taking a shit in a military-style bathroom staring at each other, I'd watch all hour 45, man. Like, I'd be seated for the whole thing. It's Freddy and Jason, man. It's my whole childhood. So.
It's our crossover. It's our Avengers Endgame. Come on.
Exactly. So it does, whatever they do, I'm going to watch, man. But the CGI in this was a little too much for me at times. Some of the practical stuff looked great. Like, the fire walk through the cornfield was awesome.
Yes.
Like that was awesome. Great. Like, there was a lot of really good stuff, but then you get like that. And you're like, didn't need it. I could have went to sleep tonight just fine having not seen that. So we've talked about your first horror movie being Freddy vs. Jason and what that means to you, Jared. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Jared? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
No, it's not Halloween. Scream and Halloween are very close second and third, though. My favorite horror movie is The Conjuring 2. Now, that might be like, I haven't heard many people say that any of the Conjurings are their absolute favorite, but a lot of the horror movies I love, a lot of the movies I love in general are sort of centered around like, the specific context I watched them in, specific memories I made, just around the time that I saw the movie. And the thing with The Conjuring 2 is that it's also my wife's favorite horror movie, which helps because so when we moved to where we live now in upstate New York, it was still in the midst of COVID, and we weren't like going to any Halloween parties or anything like that, and we wanted to stay home and watch horror movies. So we did a bit of a Conjuring binge. My wife can't rewatch the first one. That movie is like just absolutely terrifies her, but we both absolutely fell in love with The Conjuring 2. It is, I think, still genuinely scary. You have Valak, the scariest Valak has ever been. The old man whose name I can't remember. Some of the great James Wan jump scares and atmosphere in that movie. But it also has great moments of like joy and happiness and sweetness. I mean, what other movie do we get Patrick Wilson singing "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You"? That is just like my favorite scene in that entire movie. Yeah, and so I love it. It's my favorite of the Conjuring universe. The Conjuring universe is actually my favorite horror franchise. I even have fun with the bad ones, but The Conjuring 2 wins out.
It's my favorite Conjuring movie as well.
Yes.
My favorite part of him singing "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" is watching that mom just like feel so happy, like seeing her cry and like that whole thing. Like she finally gets a little bit of a break and seeing her kids all smiling and singing. Like what a beautiful moment in the film, man.
After however long they've been.
Part in the film is at the end when they're putting the tapes together on the train. That that shit was dope. Like I was like, that's fucking sick, man.
That was a jaw-dropping moment. I remember when the first time I watched it, it was like, oh my god.
And I agree with you. I think The Conjuring 2 is the best in that franchise. The Conjuring 1 has probably one of my top 3 favorite jump scares with the "look what she made me do." Like with that moment, like that really fucking scared me in the first one. But overall, when it comes to story, writing, like the nun, Valak, like you said, holy shit. Like like nobody else can get Valak right. Valak was so good in this film, man.
I just wish James Wan would come back to do one more Conjuring movie, but that's not who we're getting for the 4th one. So,
well, we are getting the Nun 3. We knew that was going to happen the minute the Nun 2 came out because it made a shitload of money.
So much money.
And like I said, just please give me a good one. Like give me James Wan back to do a Nun movie. Like or give it off to like give Flanagan a Nun movie. Give anybody a Nun movie, but just give it to somebody that's very established in horror.
Yes.
I think that could really, really, because the cinematography of the Nuns, fantastic. Beautiful movies. We need somebody to write the story is what we need. And both those movies, that's where they're lacking. All they cared about was being beautiful and getting you from jump scare to jump scare to jump scare without any type of real storytelling that made any semblance of sense, which is the total opposite of The Conjuring.
Yes.
The Conjuring is all about the story and how important the story is. So, dude, I could talk to you about The Conjuring all day because I do love it.
I'd love to.
But like I said, overall, the biggest one for me, La Llorona. Everybody knows how I feel about that movie, having grown up in a Hispanic family, seeing it take place mostly to a white woman in California. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? That movie, I really wish we could get a true Conjuring universe La Llorona that took place in Mexico and really upped the ante. I think that could be really, really amazing. So, but let's not sit here and talk about The Conjuring all night because, like I said, we could definitely do that. Now, before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question, Jared. We're going to go back to Freddy vs. Jason, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. What we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Jared, what would your ranking of Freddy vs. Jason be?
Just given how much like it did affect me, it literally gave me nightmares, and it made me not want to watch horror for like 6 years after that. I have to give it a 5 out of 5. Not only was it my first horror movie, but it, like you said, it introduced me to 2 of like horror's biggest icons. So I have to give it 5 out of 5 skulls.
And for me, I've said this 1,000 times. It doesn't have to be a Five Skull movie to be Five Skull effective.
Right.
You know, because I feel there's movies that have affected me like that I wouldn't call perfect movies. You know, that's just how that goes.
Yep.
So I know I said this at the beginning, guys, but all of Jared's links are down in the description. So make sure you're following so you can subscribe. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and following him on social media so you can stay up to date on everything he has coming up for us. You're going to want to know what he's doing in September and October and follow along on this. So that way you can recommend maybe some directions to take with the Until Dawn storyline. So, Jared, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow SledgeHammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.